With the release of Jujutsu Kaisen volumes 29 and 30, Gege decided to give us one last drop of JJK with a 16-page epilogue giving us closure to various characters and both a flash forward to the near and incredibly far future, as well as one last glimpse of the Heinen era. However, with this epilogue comes the chance to improve upon the lackluster ending with chapter 271 of the manga. The only way to see if the ending was improved is to break down each epilogue one by one to analyze the possible lore implications of the final piece of new Jujutsu Kaisen media. Yeah, no, I can't believe it either. Gege actually acknowledged Yuko's existence after a little over, 208 chapters. And that's if we count the epilogue as chapter 272. Makes Nobara's disappearance look like child's play in comparison. Jesus Christ. We open Yuko's epilogue back in middle school, with Yuji and Yuko waiting outside school during a snowy spell, with Yuji remarking that snow still has a special feeling despite how old he gets. We call this foreshadowing in the business. If we overanalyze here like usual, snow is used to symbolize both purity and innocence, which is obviously fitting given the time-sensitive context of this particular epilogue's opening. However, this fleeting moment is juxtaposed by flinging us back to present-day Sendai as Yuko reflects on her time in middle school with only one certain sorcerer on her mind, who she bumps into for the first time since the Shibuya incident. As it turns out, Yuji is back home to finally clear out his grandpa's house after about 6 months, considering he got, a little bit sidetracked, while Yuko is also on her way to clear out her grandma's house before she moves into a nursing home. But most importantly, they discussed a series of unfortunate events which took place in Tokyo from Halloween to Christmas Eve. Although both ignored discussion of Yuji's remaining scars from his intense series of battles with Mahito and Shibuya, the majority of which he healed off screen after his initial fight with Megami Sukuna during the lead up to the Shinjuku Showdown. And as we find out, Yuko was primarily in Mishida during the final few arcs, which Yuji had already learned from Nobara, getting a fairly tense reaction out of Yuko, while the GOAT remains oblivious in traditional shonen MC fashion. Although this obliviousness can quite easily be overlooked as it begins to snow, bringing the two back to a sense of familiarity and nostalgia. Maybe this was the true meaning behind specials. Finally, we close out the first epilogue with the two bonding over their love for snow and one last rare drop of Yuko and Yuji ship material. Although Nobara and Megami's reactions are priceless. This is also Megami's final appearance, which it's a little disappointing. I mean, even a short epilogue of him mastering his remaining Shikigami or completing his domain would have been nice, but fuck it, I guess. He's forever bound to bum tier. Skill issue. Still doesn't feel real the series is over, not gonna lie. Like, this is our last look at Yuji, and it's an oddly melancholic panel to send him off on, and honestly perfectly encapsulates his character. A hopeful and kind spirit that perseveres even if it seems futile, no matter his own personal cost. Overall, I think this was the perfect epilogue to open with. It does a superb job at setting the tone for this final chapter. Like I've said before, is an oddly emotional send-off to our beloved main trio. Okay, well, except Nobara, who got her own epilogue. In fact, why not just give each member of the main trio their own individual epilogue? Like, did we really need an epilogue for... Okay, I'm not fully against the idea of giving Panda his own epilogue, since it would be nice to get a bit of clarification on his role in Jujutsu Society now that his siblings' cores are destroyed. But on the other hand, there were so many more characters that arguably needed, dare I say, deserved an epilogue over Panda, but what we got wasn't too bad. In fact, it's surprisingly an interesting look into the future of Jujutsu Kaisen, as we open 62 years in the future, where we find Panda sitting in storage in Yuta and Maki's house, with their grandkids poking around, who have an uncanny resemblance to their grandparents. And while we don't learn the names of the two grandchildren, their personalities are fairly on point, although I would argue the girl is a bit more in line with Rika than Yuta, while the grandson is very clearly like Maki. Gotta respect Panda for just immediately shit-talking them after being awoken for the first time in 45 years though. Speaking of which, we find out thanks to the narrator-kun that after getting literally destroyed by Kashimo during the Culling Games, Panda began to lose control of his body and was placed into storage in October 2035. I guess this also makes it our second glimpse of the Gojo clan estate in the entire series, which, unsurprisingly, Yuta is now the head of. Well, again, I feel that a lot of other characters probably should have received an epilogue chapter over Panda. It's still somewhat sad, considering Panda has essentially been reduced to being its sentient stuffed animal, which I mean, he kinda always was to some extent, but not like this. It's a tragic way to go out, I'm not gonna lie. Now, while I'm not saying we need JJK Next Generations, it would be cool to get another glimpse into this era someday in the form of a one-shot or miniseries, but I think a full-blown series would be really unnecessary, like Attack on Titan sequel levels of unnecessary. As in, please for the love of God, do not leave Jump's corporate greed let this happen. We do not need the modern day Naruto parallels to go that far. Anyway, now off to JJK Shippuden. Surprisingly, we finally got some lore about Nobara's family, with Kugisaki meeting her mom for the first time in at least a decade, judging by how tense the two are, and by the fact her mom seemingly only recently found out that Nobara became a Jujutsu sorcerer. Damn, this trio really had some deadbeat parents, huh? Although speaking of dead, this mini family reunion is under the guise of a funeral, though we never find out whose. Most of this epilogue is the two understandably beefing with each other, with the important cliff note of Nobara stating that she would have become a Jujutsu sorcerer even if it wasn't for her grandmother, who her mom is terrified to see since she has no remorse for being a deadbeat, even gloating right to Nobara's face multiple times throughout the chapter. Like, this shit gets really bad. My lord, why would you admit to this? What happened to shame? However, Nobara's mom finally gets her comeuppance when Granny Kugisaki shows up, deservedly pissed at her daughter for abandoning Nobara in favor of essentially being a gold digger slash sugar baby. Also, as a cool detail, Nobara's granny is missing the opposite eye to Kugisaki. Neat. Well, this is definitely better than Panda's epilogue. It once again raises more questions by introducing new lore that was never discussed in the main story up to this point, mostly due to the fact Nobara was out of action for like over half the series. You can't just introduce Nobara's family at the end of the series and then just swiftly move on. Though I guess it's better than Yuta, who I'm pretty sure we never get to see his family outside of the Gojo clan, who are very distant relatives anyway. Unless this family in chapter 269 is supposed to be Yuta's. To get back on track, it's a good epilogue. I just wish it was its own one-shot. Now to finally finish Jujutsu Kaisen again with the final epilogue. Fittingly, we end the epilogues with Sukuna and Urame meeting for the first time in the Heinen era, with Sukuna finding a young Urame among the corpses of his family, who he accidentally killed in his sleep, using his signature ice jutsu. Feeling empathy disguised in her selfish need, Sukuna decides to take the young sorcerer in to replace his ice house after accidentally crushing it, with him instructing Urame to watch over what looks to be a dead deer and maybe bear to make sure the meat doesn't rot, with some mild protest from Urame, which is followed by the sweet moment of Sukuna and Urame sharing a meal. I really love the way Gege drew Sukuna in this panel. He's so angry looking for like no reason. After getting a taste of Urame's cooking, Sukuna is intrigued by his technique and knowledge and asks him if he knows how to cook people, forging a friendship that would last for literal centuries. But we're not done yet, as it's revealed that this entire flashback was Sukuna and Urame chatting in the afterlife as we last saw them in chapter 271, with the two wondering why they never feel cold next to each other despite Urame's chilling abilities, finally closing out Jujutsu Kaisen one last time. And with that, the story of Jujutsu Kaisen is finally complete, spanning 272 chapters in total. To answer the question proposed at the beginning of this video, does the Jujutsu Kaisen epilogue fix the ending? Yeah. I mean, if the epilogues weren't as good as they were, it still wouldn't really be that hard to beat, considering just how unsatisfying the end of chapter 271 was. Although I can't lie, I do think some of the epilogue picks could have been better, especially with the amount of unresolved plotlines. Like again, why not give an epilogue to each member of the main trio instead of just Nobara? Why not a chapter where Megumi finally reaches his full potential, or Yuji finally learns the truth behind his family, or hell, even following up the fake Kenjiku and Takaba? Why did he do this? As it is though, I would regard this epilogue as a fairly satisfying end to Jujutsu Kaisen. And if we never get more post-story content, I honestly wouldn't be super disappointed. I mean, I'd still be disappointed, just not as much as you get the point. But let's not end on a negative note, because let's be real, there's enough of that in the world at the moment, especially considering the events that have transpired since the beginning in 2025. I think it's important to remember that the people behind these stories are just that, people. With just how saddening Gege's final thoughts were on Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole, it's important to respect the creators behind your favorite manga and anime, because without them, without Gege, we wouldn't have this beautiful story. Thank you, Gege.